Welcome to the Heart of England Speakers podcast. My name is Pierre and I'm your host. Come join our Toastmasters Club every first and third Tuesday of the week. Currently, we're doing this online at hotspeakers.org.uk for all the details. Today on the podcast, I have a very special guest. She is our current speech champion. And everybody say welcome to Abbey. Hello, Abbey.
Thank you, Pierre. That was a very nice introduction.
Well, it's the facts. You are a current speech champion for our club, so you should be proud of that.
I never thought of it that way, but yes, it's an honor to have that opportunity and a real nice experience too.
And again, congratulations to you. That's pretty awesome. So first of all, Abbey, we're gonna try to get to know you better. So, are you local from the Solihull area? Did you grow up here?
No, I am not local. I've ended up here by default. It was not part of the plan. I just ended up here. I am a Leicestershire girl. I grew up in a village south of Leicestershire, and I got educated around the Leicestershire area. And then I moved over to Northampton area for my university days. And then when I was around 24, I ended up just booking a one-way ticket to Sydney, Australia, as you do. And my residency was in various countries around that area of the world. And then romantically, a lovely love story, I met someone and I ended up here in Solihull. And that's it. So it's a bit random and an adventure, but I'm very pleased and happy to be here. And it's a real privilege to be in this area. I do love it. And the people are so lovely too.
That's very cool. All right, let's take this back a little bit, step by step. Okay, so you went to uni. What did you study?
My background in health and well-being, that is my passion and interest. So I decided to study sport therapy. I originally did some work before, so I didn't go into university when I was 18. I luckily I didn't choose to do that straight away. I decided to work in gyms, be a personal trainer, teach lots of studio classes because I love dancing and all that jazz. And I became fascinated with the human body. And my manager, my fitness manager at the time, he was a strength and conditioner, and he's kind of used me as a guinea pig to teach me everything, which I'm very grateful for. And ultimately, I wanted to learn more, and I decided to do a degree in sport therapy for 3 years at the Northampton University.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So you booked your one-way ticket to Australia. Where did you end up in Australia? What did you do?
So it was Sydney, and my intention really was to find work. I wanted to start a new life. And I was like, I wasn't very happy in England at the time. And I thought, you know what, I'm just going to go over to Sydney, Australia. I've got cousins over there, so that was sort of a reason why I ended up there as well. But I didn't know anyone. I sort of booked a hostel and did this little package for 2 weeks, which involved lots of trips and meeting people. And then really my intention after that was, I need to get a job. And then I ended up eventually becoming a club manager of a gym in part of in a part of Sydney. Which was an experience. Yeah. And that took 10 weeks. So I was quite proud of that. 10 weeks in a country I never knew, I don't know anyone. And I ended up being offered a job as a club manager, which was cool. So the stars aligned. Yeah.
How long did you stay in Australia?
It wasn't that long. It was a bit of a journey in myself. It was only for 6 months.
6 months.
Because from that experience, I learned what I like and didn't like. And I really realized I love teaching. I love mentoring. I love just supporting people. And I didn't really like the sales and the operational sort of stuff. So I decided to go to become a English language teacher. That was my fastest way into a classroom, because otherwise you'd have to do another degree. And I didn't want to do that. Mm-hmm. And I had this childhood dream that I wanted to go to Thailand. And the film The Beach with Leonardo DiCaprio. Mm-hmm. I can remember so vividly. I was sat in England, I was about 10 years old, and I never used to go abroad. We always used to go Cornwall. So the idea of going abroad to a tropical place was like amazing. And I saw the beach and I was like, wow, you know, Maya Bay, where it's all shot.
Yeah, it's all
and filmed.
overpopulated now. But
Oh
yes.
God, yeah. But that was my dream. I was like, I've got to go there. And the opportunity arose, I was like, I'm going to study my English language qualification in Phuket and go visit Maya Bay. And I did that. So
Very
that was one of my
nice.
bucket lists. So I ended up kind of uprooting from Sydney and I went over to Thailand for a little bit.
How long did you stay in Thailand?
So for that point, I only was there for the length of the course, which was only 4 weeks.
Oh, wow.
And then I went back to England and I did a summer. So I did a summer camp. So that was my first experience teaching. I wanted to really just immerse myself into getting experience. So I went down to Hastings and I taught for 7 weeks in a really intense experience as a summer camp teacher. Just working like day in and day out, really. But it was very good it was like throwing me in the wrath of the fire. It's like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I've just got to get on with it. And from that point, I needed to get another job after the summer camp. I was like, well, what am I going to do? And you speak to the teachers and they've done fascinating things, you know, teaching in Spain and Asia. And one of the places was China. Now, I had no intention to go to China, but there were a lot of nice jobs over there. And it seemed to be a nice bridge for me to be looked after. They had some nice programs over there. So then I sort of ended up in China.
Where in China?
I ended up I was meant to be in Shenzhen, which is south of China, near Hong Kong. But then when I was in China, they decided to locate me to Ningbo instead, which is south of Shanghai.
Yep.
And I ended up living at school there for 10 months and getting my experience in a government school. So it was really raw. It was very like, wow, like this is China, you know.
So you went to the real China, not the tourist Shanghai, for example, right?
No, yeah. And to be living in a government school. It wasn't an international school. It wasn't all very pretty and like lots of English speakers or anything like that. It was pretty authentic, which was really nice. And I got to really experience authentic China and the culture.
You're pretty adventurous, because that's pretty hardcore to go to a Chinese state-owned school.
It was, I think, because it was sort of there was a bridge between an agency in England and an agency in China. So for me, that it's sort of they looked after us. So but then you don't really realize what you're in for until you get there.
Right.
And that's where the art of communication and miscommunication sort of became more magnified.
Yes, this is I think the crux of our conversation. What do you feel are the biggest differences in communication style between, Western and Eastern civilizations, I guess? What's the biggest shock to you?
It's more about just it's more about being the level of English. I'm not sure if there's different abilities in English, because I've spoken to people in China that are fluent in English and they're awesome at English. So I think it's more about just the ability of your English language level as well. Likewise, in Thailand, the ability it depends on how well they've learned English language. So it's very much, I have to think when I speak to non-native speakers of English that are in that process of learning to speak English, I have to really put my head on of what have they learned, what haven't they learned, what like past, present, future grammar tenses have they learned, vocabulary, and also idioms, inferring. So if I say something that's not literal, but it's inferring something that I haven't said, that's a real technical skill to learn within another language. And it's a very advanced skill. So then I have to be very, very, very mindful and diligent about what words I'm specifically saying to this person, and how are they receiving it, and could they be interpreting it in a different way. And often that can happen, and you realize, wow, I've just said something they don't understand it. It's not because they're in the wrong. It's just like I'm having to really rewire and rethink how I'm putting this across.
Yeah, I'll do a quick story. I was on a conference call a few years ago with colleagues in China, and I was pulled in so many directions. So when they asked me on the phone, "How are you?" and I said, "Oh, geez, very popular," meaning that my time was taxed all the time, and I just heard crickets. And I'm like, I don't think they got that. So I can totally understand what you're saying about being clear about what you say, because what's clear to you is not necessarily clear to them. If there's all right, obviously, I'm sure there have been some difficult times, but if you can think of one, if there's one thing that sticks in your mind that was really difficult, and also on the flip coin is, what's the best thing you got from that experience?
Oh, that one specific thing that was difficult to communicate with. Even like when I was traveling around in China, and I can remember when we were trying to go to the Beijing, the Great Wall of China, and we ended up in a different location because of miscommunication. Or what I noticed as well in China, that there's not a lot of signs that are in English. So that's another challenge to travel around China, is all in Chinese. Or Pinyin, which is the English sort of Roman alphabet of Chinese. And I can remember it was on Christmas Day, and luckily I was with one of my friends who was studying Chinese, so she was quite good at that. But even her ability to speak Chinese, what I found as well within the culture, and I think this might be going off track with your question, but sometimes we don't, in Asia, they like to keep you happy, or like, they don't want to upset you as much. So sometimes people tell you things that aren't true, but they just want to say something to keep you happy. And I think perhaps something happened where we're trying to communicate, like, which bus do we go on to get to this part of the Great Wall of China, and I think they just kind of pointed to one of the buses, but it wasn't. Perhaps they may have not kind of understood the question. Gotcha. And then we ended up like in a place that was not actually. We had to get off it, and we're like, this is not where we're meant to be. So there's that as well. I think there's a human behavior sort, and I think also I experienced that when someone says something to me. And I sometimes nod, I'm like, okay. And then I'm like, I don't understand what they say. I just want to keep them happy and just smile. So that's another sort of, I guess, layer to communication and sort of the cultural habits that we have. And particularly if you're a people pleaser. And so particularly in your case, when you were having a meeting in China, they don't, part of it's like they just want to be polite. And sometimes they will just kind of smile and they don't want to say anything. So there's a lot of layers. I think there's a lot of layers with communication when we're speaking in two different cultures. And the level of English might be a bit compromised depending on what. And also the accent as well.
Yes.
That's why speaking very clear and with those pauses and very clear articulation of each word and vocabulary, that's very important, because when you learn another language, you hear more of the standardized English, the Queen's English. And it's
how's your Mandarin, nice. By the way?
Oh, non-existent. I get so embarrassed even saying ni hao, because I know it's all tonal. I learned Thai a little bit, and it's all very tonal. It's kind of a challenge in of itself, that just getting your articulation of the tones. It's kind of like training another muscle.
Yeah. You also have to remember that if you think about it, in China, your Google Translate might not work. The tools you rely on, let's say in Europe, you catch an Uber, you have to catch a Didi, you use your WeChat. So it's a completely different alternate universe almost. So to think about how you operate in the Western world is really different than how you operate in China.
Yeah, there's a lot of, for a foreigner at least, there's a lot of loops you have to go through. It just takes ages sometimes. It's like you have to do this and that and this and that, and a lot of red tape. And one of the primary things that I learned from China is to be patient. I had to be patient. And I had, from a philosophical point of view, I learned not to get angry or frustrated or bring my own metric system of like how it should be or what I think, or bring in a comparison of how it is in England to China. I'm like, no, I am a guest in China.
Yeah.
It is a privilege to be here, and I have to just go with the flow. And it taught me to just go with the flow, don't freak out, and sort of let go and have fun. And when you start doing that and you start living life like that, things just fall into place anyway, and it's quite fun. So Asia particularly has taught me just to, I guess, not take things too seriously, and to not freak out, and to become more resilient and peaceful and present. Particularly in Thailand as well, because that's a bit random. Nothing's really organized. It can be all, particularly in a school, it can be very lastminute.com. And you're like, what's going on now? I don't understand. And there's so much there's a lot of breakdown in communications. Often as a foreigner, we don't get communicated as much too. People just are like, the systems aren't really there in place for it. And you're sort of left in the unknown a lot. And I'm used to kind of feeling like that. I don't quite understand the bigger picture, but I'll just go with what I have and just do my best at that. Yeah.
Oh, I think those are actually pretty wise words to go with. Really well. Yeah. Okay, so that brings it to England, right? And about communication, and that brings us back to Toastmasters. Was being more clear in your communication, was that the crux of why you started Toastmasters?
Interesting one. I wanted to start Toastmasters in Phuket where I lived in Thailand, the island. Unfortunately, I lived south of the island, and the Toastmaster Club was the north of the island. And being on a scooter, that's not ideal. It's about an hour or so on a scooter, which is not great. Yeah, you think an island's not very big, but it is, and there's main roads and stuff. So that wasn't really an option. So when I moved to Solihull, I had just done my NLP Train the Trainer course in Bangkok, and I wanted to improve the way I presented and how I delivered trainings and things like that. And I heard about Toastmasters a lot from, typically in the personal development community, which I was involved with, you do hear Toastmasters quite a lot. It kind of pops up. So my intention was to get my message across to people, and just to I guess that personal growth. I didn't really know exactly why I wanted to go into Toastmasters. I didn't really know what to expect, but I knew that it was a good club or something for me to do that was good in the area. And I think it was just more upon intuition. And I've always had this urge, or this kind of hunger to keep on learning. I'm a bit of a learning junkie. So it was just another thing that I could do. And ultimately, the things that I thought I wanted from it, actually, I've got other things out of it that I didn't realize I needed, but I do need.
Okay. Actually, so when did you join?
I joined just over 2.5 years ago. 2.5 years ago, around that March time. Yeah.
You said you get other things from Toastmasters. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, so I ended up plonked into the committee after a few months of being in Toastmasters, and I had no idea what a committee was. I had never been involved in a non-profit organization or a club like this, and I've never been in the corporate world either. I've always kind of worked in gyms. It's always been casual. I've not really worked in a professional sort of atmosphere, as it were. And so the systems and the formalities and getting used to English culture again, which is something different, because I'm very adept to Asian culture. And I was just go with the flow and, see what happens and whatever. And then going back into the formalities of Western culture, actually, I was like, oh God, I need to learn how to be, sort of English again. And which is a bit strange. It's like fish out of water, and I have to sort of get back into it again. And so the committee, I did it because, again, I sort of had that innate thing like, oh, I like to help out. I'll try. I had no idea what I was doing. The idea of a committee and the logistics of everything, and even leadership. I'm like, oh, leadership, what's that? I don't know. I've never been taught this sort of stuff. And I fell into the role of the secretary, and then in the VPM, the vice president of membership. And I sort of realized that I was quite good at admin and doing all that sort of stuff. And then I started to understand how a club was run and the bigger picture of Toastmasters. And now it's now magnified, like, oh, leadership. And I'm like, I'd like, and even though I'm very good I've realized I'm very good at leading myself, but the idea of leading other people, because I don't have that opportunity in my job role. I work remotely. I'm quite isolated. I work with people around the world, but I don't necessarily have a big team that I'm leading. And what I love about Toastmasters is that it gives you this opportunity to do that, because there's a lot of people that don't have those opportunities because of whatever work they're in. And it gives you that space to experiment and to have a go at it. And I'm now into that sort of phase where I'm like, oh, I want to develop my leadership and understand how do I communicate with other people and empower them. And I love just how that there's opportunity to do that within Toastmasters.
Yeah, as the VP for PR myself, I mean, there are things that I've done. It's like, oh, that, it's really cool. PRs and reaching out to people and putting flyers out. I mean, you don't do that. I don't do that in my regular job. So yeah, I totally understand where you're coming from. It's a really nice space to explore, and it gives you freedom to explore. And also it shows you that to run a club, it's actually a lot happens behind the curtain. You're like, geez.
I know. Yeah. And I see it as like a kind of like a playground. Mm-hmm. It's a professional playground, but it's a playground. Like, you can have fun with it, and there's no pressure that you're not going to get fired. So yeah, and you can't really fail at it or anything. You just got to do your best, and that's what I love about it. And yeah, it gives you that space to do things that you don't normally do. And then ultimately, if you like it, then it may lead into other things, and you might want to change your direction with your career and stuff like that. So
that's absolutely good advice. Abbey and I have a little history. A couple of years ago, I was actually one of the hosts for our club contest on table topics, which Abbey entered bravely. And I asked a question that I thought was really topical, and I thought everybody would have an opinion, but ended up stumping poor Abbey completely. Do you want to talk about that?
The dreaded B word, Brexit. Yes. Brexit and the dreaded P word, politics. Yes. It was an interesting one because, from my perspective, because I'd lived in Asia for quite a while, about 3 years, I was
hold on a second. Yeah. So I asked, if let's say if the Queen asked you to address the people of England about Brexit, what would you tell them? At the time, we were in the full Brexit mania, so I thought everybody would say, black or white, in or out, or something like, be neutral. But it ended up completely stumping Abbey, and for that, I feel very, really sorry to this is the day. So please go on.
Yeah, that. I can remember when I read it over, I was very perplexed. I'm like, I don't know. And like I was saying, because I'd lived in Asia for like 3 years, the Brexit came about when I was not in the country. So I was very disconnected with it. And then when I re-entered, living in England, I still wasn't very into the politics. I wasn't quite, it wasn't my area of interest at that point. And actually, it's one of those topics where I'm like, I have no idea what to say. And it was very chunked down. It was a very chunked down Pacific topic. So my tactic, and luckily I started talking, and while I was talking, I didn't know what I was going to say next, which is a skill in of itself as a table topic. You have to just go with it. And luckily, I ended up chunking it up, meaning making it very, very broad and just generally talking about politics around the world. And I think my final message was unity or something like that. It was very spiritual.
That's totally fine.
Yeah. And but that, even though that sort of was, wow, that was a really abrupt, it really disturbed my pattern of how I go into things, which was nice because that night when I went to sleep, I was so inspired because I observed how I reacted. I observed my ego. I observed my behavior and how I perceived it. And from that quite traumatic experience, it actually birthed a very nice speech from what I learned from that. And, yeah, so in of itself, even though I may not, have won or done very well from a Toastmasters table topic contest point of view, from my own personal growth, it actually accelerated and kicked me up the ass, if you could say that, and actually woke me up a bit more consciously. So thank you, Pierre, for that amazing disruptive question. And this is what life is about. We need to become disrupted. Yes. to wake ourselves up and to really, okay, because we've got a lot of blind spots, we've got a lot of shadows going on inside us, and we need these challenges and and that's what Toastmasters can bring forward with us too.
And it's so interesting. So from my perspective, when I formulated a topic in my head, I was like, oh, everybody will have an opinion, obviously. But in your case, it's quite obvious that you really could not form an opinion, really, or be neutral. So that's also a very interesting point of view. Okay, so again, you learn from that experience, and I remember your speech about the experience. That was really good. And then you decided you entered this year's contest. So, and I recall you rehearsed that speech in one of our clubs. So what can you tell us about that speech, the first time you spoke about it?
Yeah, Crack Yourself Open was the speech title.
And I might add, it is available on our podcast. So I would say, please check out Abby's speech in its totality on our website.
Yeah, and also on the YouTube channel as well.
Indeed.
It's on there. Yeah, and it's also actually on the one of the training channels for evaluations. It's everywhere.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. That speech was, like I said, like you said, I started off, my first attempt of that speech was just in a general meeting as one of my pathway speeches. And then that inspired me to just, why not do it again in the contest? And it was a bit of a play around with the Zoom and playing around with props and just having fun with that. And it was my first contest speech. I've never done a speech in a contest. Wow. So that experience was, again, eye-opening. And I learned a lot about myself. And I kicked myself up the arse again with that experience.
I mean, I know when you won, you looked really emotional. And we were all really happy for you. What did it mean to you?
To what? To win it?
Yes.
To win it? I was very humbled by it. I try not to let, my point of focus is about service and about just getting the message of that speech to other people. That's really what my point of focus and intention is. And it's the art of being humble and grateful, and not let yourself get too, like, wow, I'm pretty good sort of thing. But it was nice. It was a nice experience. I feel like I may have had a bit of an advantage because I work online all the time. So I'm very used to the camera as well. So it's more of my domain of talking to the camera is sort of my forte, as it were. So
it's a brand new world. So that's one of the things you do well, one of your skills that you do well, That's the world we live in now. So
exactly. I mean, for people that are listening, I teach online. I've been teaching online for coming probably up to 4 years or so. Wow. 4 years online. I teach over in China, and I teach to groups like 50 kids or so at a time. So I'm teaching maybe 400 students every week.
That's impressive.
Yeah, and it's day, like, I could go up to 7-8 classes a day. So I'm on stage, everyone's looking at me. And so I have to really connect through the camera and utilize it. So it's sort of programmed into me. And that intense experience that I've had over the past few years, it did rub off into the competition. And I thought, I'm going to use this to my advantage.
Oh, good. I think that's actually really well done.
Yeah.
All right, our speech champion. Is there anything, what would you tell people about Toastmasters? What's the one thing you would tell them about our club or about joining that means a lot to you?
The more I get involved with Toastmasters, and even watching the contest yesterday and actually going beyond the club, there is more to Toastmasters than just the Heart of England Club. It's an international organisation, and we've got we've got hundreds and hundreds of clubs all around the the world. I've personally attended a few of them in India, in Thailand, and even the trainings that I've attended. I'm just amazed by how well this organization's put together and how much value it brings for what, maybe 50-60 pounds for us personally, like every 6 months for that membership. There's so much value within it. Like, you could go to Toastmasters every single day. You can attend all around the world now, and you get a very comprehensive learning program and support. You've got continuous extra trainings that the district brings forward. You've got the contest that you can listen to absolutely amazing speakers and how inspirational they are. And I'm like, this is really, really cheap for how much support and networking and growth that I've personally spent probably over like $10,000 on my personal growth, like courses and stuff like that. Lots of money. Wow. Toastmasters is probably by far the most value and the most cheapest thing that I've committed to. Yeah. And it's amazing. You can make Toastmasters work for you in your own personal story and your own personal platform. You don't have to be a business person. You don't have to work in a corporation. You can be just simply someone that's just, having fun in life and thought, I just want to kind of grow myself. And I'm just amazed by how much growth that I've gained out of it and the amazing people that I've met. So yeah, like, to me, like, Toastmasters really helps people peel away your layers and to actually come back home to yourself, which is ultimately why we're here on this planet from a spiritual point of view. And I think Toastmasters has a beautiful, well-orchestrated program and systems in place for you to do that at a very affordable price. So yeah, that's my take on it. And I think if you really utilize it to its fullest capacity, you can really just be unlimited with what you can do in the world.
Yeah, and I think there's one of the paradoxes of the pandemic, I think, because everything did move online, including us as clubs. But I mean, our club that's done really well online. And as you said, you can't literally attend meetings all day, all week, like all the time. That's something that was not necessarily available before. And yes, if you really want to practice and get better at not also speaking, but also listening, I mean, you have opportunities all day, every day. So it's been really good for Toastmasters, I believe.
I personally think that now with the shift online accessibility and hybrid meetings, hopefully in the future, the fact that I went to a division contest yesterday, I wouldn't have been able to do that because it would have been far away. I wouldn't have attended a contest like that. It's my first time, and there was probably about 50-60 people on watching. And I don't think that many people go to the contest, perhaps, because it's just not accessible. So for me, the fact that it's been shifted online, the value of our memberships just skyrocketed. Absolutely skyrocketed. A lot, back in the day, people would be quite remote to their actual club, and they don't really want to venture far out of their club. But now, your world is your oyster. And I'm very looking forward to the forecast of and the future of Toastmasters, because I think everything, even hopefully the contests, I'm fingers crossed, will become hybrid so that it's accessible for everyone. So
I don't think there's any more excuses for not doing it. Remotely, to be honest.
Yeah, like we could have put a lot of things like, we can't do that, it's too technical, this and that. I think this is the future, and I'm just so excited. I think it's just made their organization a lot more valuable in my eyes. Yeah,
I believe in us as a club will, whenever we can come back live, I still believe we'll have hybrid capabilities, but more on that to follow. Well, Abbey, it's been a great time spending with you. I know you're I know you're well into well-being and yoga. Is there anything you like to tell our listeners where they can find you if they want to get in touch?
Yeah, I love sharing my stories and my experiences. And I'm a coach and a teacher and a therapist. And the best place to find me and being my authentic self would be on Instagram and Facebook. So Abbey Brinklow, Abbey Brinklow, Abbey Brinklow. Search me in Instagram and Facebook. There's only one of me in the world, which is quite nice. Very unique. So it's easy for me for you to find. And yeah, if you're interested in my stories, I'm on a journey of sharing a lot of my content is about me personally and my stories. And I think that's the best way to connect with people is through storytelling. And that's what I'm doing right now. And I'd love to hear from you all.
That's an excellent way to close. So thank you, Abbey, for, again, our speech champion. Thank you, everybody, for listening to our podcast. Again, we meet online currently, the first and third Tuesday of the month. Please come join us. For all details, go to heartspeakers.org.uk. Once again, a big thank you to Abbey.
You're welcome.
And until the next time, catch you later.